Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Raw Talks with Dr. Cami and Dr. Downs. It's been a while because Dr. Cami and I have both taken on some new adventures. Would you call it an adventure?
Yeah, complete life shift on our end over here. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I think it's good. And now we're settling in enough to start doing Raw Talks again. So that's exciting. So my thought was for today was I had a client come into my office and he said that I can bring up this question on the podcast. He says, Brandee, why is it when I'm away from my wife, I am all into self-care. I run, I take care of myself, I'm eating better. And then when my wife's around, we both just stop doing our self-care because she does the same thing when she's away because she travels a lot. So they're away a lot. So when they're apart, they each show up for themselves. They do their workout, they do their routine. And Dr. Cami, I don't know when you travel, but I know when I travel away from my family, I get a really good routine too. So I said, I thought this would be a really good topic today to talk about why is that? Why is it that when we're on our own, we show up for ourselves much better than in a relationship?
Oh, well, that's an interesting topic. I don't travel. I'm I don't go anywhere. I'm at home all the time with all my kids and stuff. So, um, I rarely am alone anymore. Um, so I mean, I
Yeah.
guess I am at work now. And I guess I can see that. Let me rephrase this. I'm just processing. So I'm going to talk as I process all that. So I would say that that's kind of true. And I think it's, at least for me, because I have the time to. And I know I say like that's at work. But I do, like, I don't have someone on top of me or three people on top of me because I have three Velcro babies. Um, all my kids like to sit on top of me, and it's hard to do that. So when
That's
I
right.
have my space and my time, it's like, oh, I can do squats, or I can walk the stairs, or I can, you know, I can eat whatever I want because I don't have picky people dictating I don't what to cook to an extent. You know what I mean? So I guess there's that piece, and then there's just like, for me, I think that there's an ease and comfort for when you are with your person, and that you can just relax a little, and you can be a bum. You can make poor choices, or choices that are more aligned with like uh, that desire piece of just being versus the desire to be better. Does that make sense? What do you think?
Yeah, I do. I do think that's an element for sure. Um, what I told him was that there's so many elements, but one thing I told him is if we go back to our roots, often we're taught that I don't know if you remember this, so let me preface this comment. Was there any time when you were younger where you were told, ah, you're gonna make such a good wife one day? So when I was younger, I'd be doing dishes, and we grew up in a there's this one time we grew up in a party house, and so there's always parties going on, and I would just be cleaning the dishes and cleaning up after adult people who were making a mess because they were drinking and partying, right? And the adult men would walk by and go, oh, one day you'd make such a good wife, and so
Mm,
I was taught in the sense of being a good wife means being clean, doing all the work, doing the laundry, not showing up for myself because I should show up for everybody else. I don't know if you ever had that experience, but I know I giggle because sometimes we look at our behavior and we go, oh, it's because I was taught not to have needs. I was taught not to have a voice. I was taught that this is what you do. So what I told my client was, well, sometimes we're taught that, you know, men are providers and women are the one that do all the housework. And so is this a top behavior that when your partner shows up, you pause everything and you show up for your partner, but you both are actually pausing for yourselves and not really showing up for each other? right? Because if he works out and she works out, and then they come home and they don't work out together, but they both want to, then the one way to inspire each other is to support each other's routines that make them the best version of themselves, right?
Hmm.
And then I kind of giggled because I teach my kids, I'll say to my kids, my most recent example is my son, who is 16, where I'll say, it's really important that you listen to the people around you. And I want you to be a good partner when you grow up, whether it's in a relationship or friends, that you take a look around and see what the needs of people are, including yourself. So am I doing the same thing my parents did? And when they're older, are they going to be like, oh no, I'm doing this because my mom taught me? Because it really is a cycle. We have to learn somewhere. We're all learning and growing. So I guess my question to you, the short answer was, um, are you trying to be a good husband? Like, what's the story behind why you pause on yourself? And
Yeah.
then
I keep
oh, go
going.
ahead.
Well, it makes me think of when we goal set. Like we have goals inside of us, and usually that's where they stay. And we have personal goals of like where do I want my fitness level and my health to be? And then we kind of don't highlight parenting goals or spousal goals or what we want for those relationships. And so it's interesting because I'm reading how to raise mentally healthy or how to raise mentally strong kids. And I'm trying to do the practices in there because I think it's beneficial. And one of the things that they have you do is put out your parenting goals. And so we did that, and I hung it up in the bathroom by the mirror. So like you can just kind of like, are you moving towards those goals? Are you staying on track, or are you moving away from them? And they're constant reminders of that. And so if you look at it from a relationship point of view, like, are we happy when we're together and we're not doing stuff? Like, do we need a break because we're going so hard individually? Do we want to keep up our goals that we're doing individually together? Like, there should be some defining things that they could even and put on paper, like write them out and then type them up and put them somewhere. So it's like, oh, we're home together. Um, what do we want to do for the day? And we do this in our house too. It doesn't always pan out really well, but it's good practice to say, okay, what do you want today? Like, not what do you want to get done? That's another question, but what do you want? What do you desire today? Like, is it, today I wanted coffee with cold foam, or I want this or that, and tapping into those small desires for the day. And then what do you want to get done? Like, what do you want to do today? What do you want the day to look like? What do you want? And I ask my kids, what do you want to do today? What do you want to get accomplished? And then um, defining that for myself. And then the third question is like, well, how can God bless you today? Like, what would be magical for you to experience today? And then you're kind of defining like what you want the day to look like and how you want the day to move. And you're getting feedback from everybody, and you have direction, right? And it's not in the ear throw anymore. It's like you're creating a structure for your relationships, for your interactions, and for your day, and for the overall arching goal of your life too. Like, how do we want our relationship to progress? So there is pieces I do believe that we're conditioned to, and we do either consciously or unconsciously put our values and our opinions on our kids and even on our spouses and our preferences and stuff. And that's pretty natural and normal. But teaching like them to distinguish like what is yours, or what values do you want to keep to move on in life, and then having those free thinkers and those self-reflecting opportunities to go, oh, I'm doing this because of these narratives that I've been holding around in these patterns, and can I change? Is that something I want to change? Like, it's kind of a deep dive into self-reflection, and your questions are probing that a little bit. Like, is it in relation to that status of a husband, or is it in like just playing around with how that mixes together?
I
Yeah.
love it because if we were to blend this conversation it's first asking, where did I get this behavior from? Or did I just assume this is what we do? Sometimes we just fall into it. It's not necessarily always programmed. I mean, we're getting it from somewhere. But then pausing and going, okay, do I want to keep going down this path? And then if not, okay, here's a homework assignment or an assignment you can do with a combination of what you just said and what I'm about to say is writing down on a piece of paper, like you said, if I had no responsibilities and I was just home and it was just me, how would my day look? What would my routines look like? Would I work out every day? Would I read a book? Would I take a bath? What would I do? And write that down. And then talking to your partner, what would they do? Right. And then you come together and go, okay, how do we take this, like you said, and integrate it as a couple into supporting each other in the relationship and then writing that down separate. And then if you have kids, then you also have to add that that into it, like you said. So then talking to your kids, it doesn't matter the age because your children are very young. I mean, my baby is 6, yours is a
The
3.
youngest,
Yeah.
I have an almost 3-year-old and a 20-month-old. I think he's
So
20, 21 months.
20 so 20-month-old, you're not going to be like, okay, so what are your goals for the day? But you can. They're not going to answer necessarily, but it's planting that way of living where we
Yeah.
can come together, compromise, collaborate, connect, and make it where we, as a family unit, you can have your needs met and other people's needs met. Because when we grow up, often it's the man does this, the woman does this. Now we understand the male female energy in the sense of men are just better at certain things and women are just better at certain things. We know this when you're parenting, and I don't know about you, Dr. Cami, but sometimes I'll say to we'll be in the same room, me and my husband, I'll say, boys, boys. And
Yeah.
then my husband will say, boys, and then they answer, right? And
Hmm.
so there's something with our tone and our vibration. There's just something different about that parenting, but there's no reason why we can't. And what I've noticed with clients, I noticed men have a tendency to let the woman run the house. I'm not saying all the time, but there's a good percent. And the man becomes quiet as if they don't have needs, because in some ways they were also
Yeah.
taught
Mhm.
they don't have needs. Hi. They were
Okay.
also taught that they don't have needs because the woman the woman leads, right? So they were taught a happy house, happy life, happy wife, right? And then I like to live happy house, happy spouse, meaning we all have needs. So I kind of think with my client, in some ways, there's multiple reasons. One, he was taught that um, because we talked about this for a little bit, but he was taught in essence, I got to put my needs aside to meet my wife needs, and there's a high probability that his wife was taught that I got to put my needs aside for my husband. But at the same time, they also both miss each other and want to be together, and they just don't know how to integrate, still showing up for themselves and each other,
Mm.
right? So there's that element of what you're taught, and then the element that so many people are taught that we don't have needs. So it's important to take a pause and say, I do have needs. And can I get to it today? Maybe, maybe not. And then a third element is if we feel like our lives should be run by our partner because we want to please them so much, then we don't have a voice and we create the cycle. So I think that the homework assignment, as what you said, is what would I do if my partner wasn't here and I didn't have to please them? And then both partners do that and then they share it and then they incorporate the kids.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's important to look at desires and those needs piece because, being in a primarily Christian country, that needs and wants are, always kind of pushed aside for other people. And I'm not saying like there's good or bad, but when you start to talk to people and you're like, well, what do you want? Like, if you could do anything, what would you want to do today? And they give you something extravagant like, oh, I want to take off and I just want to leave everything behind and go like live in the mountains of Italy or go to Bali or something like that. I just want to like take off and go away. It's like that tells me that you're not listening to the daily little wants and needs that you desire. And those are like the moments that your soul is trying to speak to you. And so like if you have been craving something, like I just want a cinnamon bun, or like, I just want to just go get coffee, or I just want to go walk around Target. I don't even want to buy anything, but I want to go do this. Like I want to do these little things. Like there's a piece of, well, why aren't you? And go do it. And usually your partner, and this is a sales tactic, you'll hear it all the time if you're like, well, I got to talk to my spouse about this. And then your salesperson will go, well, what do you think that they'll say? Do you think they'll support you in this? And it's like, well, yeah, I know they would, but I just want to talk to them. And it's like, yeah, they're going to be fine with it. We just have to bring light on this like shame piece of why I can't follow through with what it is that I want to be doing, or I am doing what I want to be doing, but I feel bad that I'm not doing what I think I should be doing, which is like if you have self-care X amount of the time because you're not together, but when you're together, you're happy and you're doing, do you want to change that? Or is that like something you feel like you have to, like being bored is part of it's good for your brain. It's part of a process. Being relaxed is something we're not good at. And recovery is that piece. It's recovery for your brain and your body. And so are you feeling like, well, I should be doing something more, but in reality, you're in a recovery phase and you need to just be in that phase. And so um, it's all self-reflection. It's all just diving into those goals. Like, what do you want for your life? What do you want the background music of life, or the background frequency is joy is my goal, right? And so I'm allowed to be angry. I'm allowed to have my emotions. I'm allowed to be lazy. I'm allowed to have sugar. I'm allowed to do these things. But the overall arching goals of my life are to be active enough to keep up with my kids, which means running and jumping and lifting up multiple pounds of children at a time. Or, the goals with my spouse are to be like communicate and feel safe communicating and, whatever it is. And like, we're, if it's just identifying what all of those pieces are and looking at where you're not doing that already and putting it on paper, because then it solidifies it and it gives you something to look at and gives you direction. Am I moving towards this or am I not? Right. And so,
Yeah, I
yeah.
think you hit a very important topic or note in what you just said. And we're multidimensional beings in the way that there's not just one good answer for this question, right? Is why do we do blank? Because there's multiple reasons we might do blank. And we talked about, when you're younger, you're being influenced by your parents on what good wife or husband is. And then you have the other parts. But what you just talked about was acceptance. And you're on your own, you want to move, you want to be healthy, you work out, you haven't seen your partner, even if it's in 24 hours, right? Because then, yeah, you have my client where there's like separation because there's traveling, right? And then you come together and like you said, you just miss them. So you just want to be in their presence and be and quiet in that presence. So that recovery moment doesn't mean you're not motivated, it just means you want to be with that person. So I think there's an acceptance in that too, is, well, what do I want? I just want to be my partner right now. I choose sitting here with my partner in the next 2 weeks and not run or work out or do whatever, because those every moments count. And that's okay. Right. And I think sometimes we are too hard on ourselves for just being in the moment, like you're taught, be in the moment, be in the moment. But then when oh, well, I'm not doing enough. Oh, I'm not working out. However, again, being multidimensional, if you're in the moment and you're like day 3 in and you're like, I haven't went and worked out, my body's being affected, then it's essential that you listen to your body's needs so that you can go back to being just present. But one of the biggest things I've realized is when I'm talking to couples is the fear if I speak up or if I, the fear if I say I'm going to do whatever, that I'm going to make them mad. I'm going to disappoint them. I'm going to not give them what they want. and fear leads. Then the fear leads the conversation more than the acceptance piece, right? And so not only is it about writing what we talked about earlier, writing that paper out of my needs, but accepting that maybe today I just don't want to work out and I just want to be with my partner. And two, do I have any fears here that if I am myself, I won't be accepted?
Yeah, I like that too. There's a lot, it's multi-layered, that's for sure. I think that it's interesting to do this um and realize that maybe you don't have the same goals too. And that isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's not a deal breaker, but um, we've both come from prior marriages where the goals didn't match up. And there was the talk of goals was the same, but the action of goals weren't, or, however that plays out. But it gives you some reflection on the relationship that maybe is going to be hard or you're not ready to deal with either. Um, one of the practices that I really enjoy doing is if you find yourself like annoyed or like your partner is, whatever, like, what is this something that they've always done? Have they changed? And when you first met them, was this cute? Did you find it like cute and charming?
Sure.
Um, if yes, then you're the one that's changed and you need to like reflect on that. If no, then if it's that something that they've changed, and you're supposed to evolve and grow. And we've talked about that in relationships as well. But, um, sometimes this practice isn't necessarily always going to be a bonding. Like this is my, like, we're on the same page. We want the same things kind of thing. It might be like, well, no, when I'm with you, I don't want to do X, Y, and Z. Okay, but I do. And then you have to kind of maneuver through that. But it opens communication and it opens up that awareness of yourself and of another person that you're trying to have an intimate life with. And that in itself might be beneficial.
I think of this example because I do feel like you can bond through those moments of either dysregulations or not connecting. And this is what I mean by that. I remember years ago, I had a client, and we often learn from our clients because they'll do something and then you go, oh, shoot, okay, I got to work on that. I had a client and he goes, I miss, I hate when my wife asks me if the chicken is done. And I started laughing because I did that with my husband. And so I just kind of giggled and I said to him, I said, why does that bother you? He goes, well, because I miss my wife's independence. I miss that she would just cook dinner on her own before without having to ask me if the chicken was cooked. Like when the chicken is done. And then he asked me, why are you laughing? I said, because I actually do that with my husband. I'll be in the kitchen. I'm very independent. I can cook on my own. And then I'll ask him, hey babe, is this done? And as I'm talking to you, I realized the reason I do that is because I miss my husband. I want him to be a partner with me. And instead of them sitting on the couch and watching TV or doing something else, I want him in the kitchen with me. I want him to cook with me. I want him to be involved with me. And then for him, that was an insight for him as well. Like, oh crap. Okay, so she just wants me to be more involved. And so I laugh because sometimes it just comes down to communicating our needs, right? And we find, and I don't think we're doing it consciously all the time because I didn't realize until that moment that's what I was doing. And my husband himself, I said to him one time, this was years ago too, I was like mad at myself because I'm a very active, moving, go, go, go person. And he's a very chill, I'll do things as I go in the now person. And so I would sit down with him and I said to him, I was like, I don't understand why I'm just sitting here watching these shows all day. This is ugh, right? And he goes, I think I know why. And I was like, why? He goes, because you miss me and you want to be with me. And I like to sit and watch shows. And I was like, oh, that is so true because I can get up on a Sunday and I can move, move, move and not sit down until 6, 10 p.m. at night. Not that I want to, but there's always stuff to do. And he can just sit all day and be fine. Right. And so I'm fighting for him to sit with me. He's fighting or to be with me, and he's fighting for me to sit with him in a way. So, but when we talked about it, our communication changed, where I would say, I miss you. I want to spend time with you. Will you help me with this project?
Mhm.
And he'll say, hey, I would like you to come sit by me watching a show.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that you said like it's a realization, like you get those lightning bolts going, oh, because back when I did marriage counseling a long time ago, he always said there's smoke and then there's fire. And so the things that are bothering you are likely smoke, but it's not the actual fire of the problem or what's going on. So you're saying like, hey, can you check this food while I'm cooking? Because, I want you in the kitchen. It's not an incompetence. It's actually this need to want to be together, but you don't realize the connection. And so one of the practices that I've learned since then was to have, when you're having a conversation, you say, instead of like putting your views on things, you say, why is this important to you? And it gets the other person to think and have conversations. And it's very interesting, like with parenting too, like, why is this topic, like, why is this so important to you? Because you have different ideas of importance. We have different
Yeah.
levels of, what we think is important, and what we want to put our attention on. And so it opens up the conversation so you can get inside that a little bit deeper and say, well, why is it important that I sit and watch TV with you all day? Oh, because I like to be near you. And you're like, it's a sweet thing. It's not like, or it could be like, because I feel bad that you want to move around all day and just clean, clean, clean and get all this stuff done. And I just don't have the energy for it. Like, it opens up that
Yeah.
conversation.
100%.
Um, so I think that's a great practice to have, like, well, why is this important to you? Why is such a fight for you?
Yeah.
Or whatever
I
case
guess
may be.
yeah, being curious with your partner's behavior. And I think having a conversation about it is so important. Like to be
Mhm.
vulnerable. I was reading this article, I don't remember who wrote it, but this guy who's a family therapist said there's two really important things in all relationships, and one is to be vulnerable, and one is to take a risk, right? Because you're taking a risk to be vulnerable. When your husband or your wife is mad, don't ignore them. Be curious, be vulnerable. Hey, I notice you're upset. I'm afraid you're upset with me, but why are you upset? Like, can we talk about it? Finding solutions. So often people shut down. They don't become curious. So then the wife or the husband feel ignored because the other one, I find this in couples where one partner is upset because the other partner's not listening. The other one knows they're upset, but they're afraid that they're the one in trouble. Sometimes the partner's upset because something happened at work. And then the partner feels like, I'm going to ignore them because I don't want them to blame me again, or I'm never good enough, or there's all this fear that lingers. So going back to what you said is being curious with your partner. I think it starts with being curious with yourself and your whys, like you said, then being vulnerable enough to bring them the conversation up with your partner, and then right there from there developing a plan of how are we going to integrate what we both need. And not, I don't really think any, I mean, I'm sure there are abusive relationships, there are, where one does want to break down the other partner through, gaslighting and condescending responses, but
Mhm.
most couples, you come together because you want to be something greater together, right? But in order to do that, you have to be vulnerable and take risk and be curious.
It's really hard to mm, take criticism. And I think that when one person is upset, whether that's with the other person or not, there's a fear of criticism, and and anger is a righteous emotion. So when you're expressing your displeasure with something with your life that you're sharing with someone else, they're going to naturally put up defenses, and feel like, well, I do X, Y, and Z, and I'm doing all these things. And there can be conflict with that. And it's both, right? And life is paradoxical. It is yes and no all the time. So, yes, it's like, yeah, you're right, but you're also wrong. Like, you can be upset about this, and I'm also doing these things. So it's more of an acknowledgement of your feelings. Like, I can see why that stresses you out. I can see that, you know. I also feel like I'm getting defensive because I do all these other things. And then there's the conversation that can happen. But the one, you know, it's not fair. It's shared, right?
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
like your marriage, your relationship. It's not fair. It's shared. And I heard when she say, um, you know, like it's not fair. 8 inches goes in and 8 pounds come out. It's not fair, but it's a shared. And so like when
Yeah.
you're sharing your life with someone and what you know, my standards are different. So I have a
Yeah.
shorter fuse for different things because I can't handle it where he can because it doesn't bother him. Like if
Yeah.
like this is dirty, like if my I just want my kitchen and my bathroom clean and like the rest of the house can be messy, where he's like, I have to pick up these toys, you know, so like there's different levels of stuff going on. And you have to keep falling in love with that person too. And you have to realize like if nothing changed, would I still want to be with this person?
Yeah.
If nothing changed, would I still want to be with this person? And if you're like, well, yeah, I can handle this because it's not that big of a deal, I'd rather have them around, you know, then you fall into like acceptance of where your standards are, where theirs are. You can have the conversation, but acknowledging the feelings that you're having versus feeling like I have to do more, I have to change, unless that's the conversation. Like if you don't change this,
Yeah.
then it's a problem. Um,
Well, I think it's important though too that with that is I try so hard to get couples to see each other as inspirational points for each other, and that when one sees a gap, it's because they love them to progress. So when you say that, would I leave if they didn't change? No, but damn it, I see this gap, right? And if you address that gap and the person doesn't want to change, then there's an acceptance piece that you have to do. But I find so many couples who fight when their partner sees a gap. So it's like this, how beautiful would it be to be able to go, my husband said to me one time, hey babe, I noticed you were very anxious when you were at the store. I think you need to talk to your therapist about it. And like I could have got mad and be like, well, duh, duh, duh. But I was like, okay, he sees a gap, so I addressed it and I came back to him and said, thank you for noticing that. Thank you for being aware. And this is my plan. And this is why I get anxious at the store. And this is what I need for my family to not get to that point. Right. But if we go straight to defense or straight to this, there's not. And I think you're right. There's a point where I see my therapist, because I'm also in therapy, couples ask me initially, are you trying to change your husband? And I said, no, I don't think so. My husband tells me he wants to be this way. And I believe that he wants to be that way. So I'm trying to support him into that change. And then he asked my husband, do you think that she's trying to change? And he goes, no, she's just trying to support me because it's true. But there, so often the answer is, no, I want them to be someone they're not. So I think it goes back to what you're saying is that can I accept them? Would I want to leave today if they don't ever change? And sometimes the answer is yes. And that's where you have to do acceptance. But again, give the other person the opportunity to change and be honest with them that if this doesn't change, I cannot, it's my breaking point. It's my deal breaker. Right. So with all this information that we talked about, because we talked a lot about different components of the relationship, if you were to give this male client advice to his question to wrap it up, what would you say?
I would probably just go back to what I initially said of, you know, identifying what the goals are that you want in your life, and you can section those out as detailed as you want, like career, money, relationships, fitness, health, whatever. But to really look at what is it in the relationship that you want? What are your goals for your marriage? Is that, you know, and clearly define that as far as not like every time we're together we're going to get up at 10 a.m., we're going to work out, we're going to eat salads or whatever it is. Like you don't, it's not
Right.
it's not the nitty pitty. Like that's a piece of active surrender. It's creating an overarching goal or feeling that you want in your life and in these areas, and then being open to allowing something to present themselves to have the opportunity to create that. But when you get into like trying to control each and every little detail of it, then you're going to run into frustration and issues. So it's what do you want the overarching goals to be, and you have to do that together. I mean, you can write a few and kind of bring them together individually, but then you want to go over it as a couple and see where the gaps are and if it's something that you guys want to fix, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think that's great advice. And I would just I would duplicate that. So
Yeah.
thanks for watching us here at Raw Talks. If you feel like this video will help somebody that you know, please forward it to them. Please like and share and subscribe. That's the word I was looking for. And we look forward to seeing you on our next Raw Talk.
Yeah. Put questions in the comments.
Yes, please.